The rain came down in sheets, turning the cracked sidewalks of Washington Square Park into shallow rivers that reflected the gray sky. Evelyn Hargrove sat with her back against the rough bark of an ancient oak, its roots sprawling like desperate fingers into the mud. Her floral dress, once a cheerful thrift store find, clung to her thin frame, soaked through and heavy. The cardigan she wore, knitted by her late mother decades ago, offered no warmth against the October chill. In her lap, a styrofoam container held the remnants of a meal: cold chickpeas, soggy rice, and a few limp vegetables, scavenged from a church handout earlier that morning. She scooped a spoonful with a plastic fork, her hands trembling not just from the cold but from the ache in her bones, the kind that settled in after too many nights on benches and under bridges. She was 68, though the lines etched into her face made her look older. Her gray hair, matted and dripping, framed a face that had once smiled easily at grandchildren who no longer called. Evelyn ate slowly, mechanically, because hunger was a familiar companion, but today it gnawed deeper. The food tasted like nothing, but it was fuel, and fuel kept her moving. One more day, one more chance to find a dry corner, a kind stranger, a way back to something that resembled a life. Across the park, under the partial shelter of a dripping awning near the chess tables, stood a man in a tailored charcoal suit. His name was Daniel Whitaker, 35, a junior partner at a law firm in Midtown Manhattan. His umbrella lay forgotten in the office. He hadn't expected the sky to open up during his lunch hour walk. He ran a hand through his dark hair, slicking it back as water streamed down his face. His Italian leather shoes were ruined, squelching with every shift of weight. He was on the phone, voice low but urgent, pacing in tight circles. "No, tell them we can't settle for less than $8 million, he said, his tone clipped, professional, the kind honed in boardrooms and depositions. "If they want to play hardball, we've got the emails. All of them." He paused, listening, then sighed. "Just get it done, Sarah. I'm out of the office." He ended the call and stared at his phone, the screen blurred by raindrops. Another deal, another win for the firm, another notch in his climb toward senior partner. But today, the victory felt hollow. His wife, Claire, had texted him that morning, "We need to talk when you get home." No emoji, no warmth. Just those 5 words. They had been married 7 years, and the cracks had started showing months ago. Late nights, missed dinners, the way he prioritized closing arguments over bedtime stories with their daughter, Lily. Daniel pocketed the phone and looked out into the park. That's when he saw her, the old woman under the tree, eating from a takeout box like it was her last meal. Something about her posture, the way she hunched protectively over the food, stirred an unease in him. He told himself to keep walking. He had a meeting in 40 minutes, a dry suit in his office, a life that didn't include stopping for strangers in the rain. But his feet didn't move. Evelyn felt his gaze before she saw him. She was used to eyes, pitying, judging, or worse, indifferent. She kept her head down, focusing on the food, willing the man to move on. But when she glanced up, he was still there, staring. Not with disgust, not with curiosity, but with something she couldn't name. Conflict, maybe. She tightened her grip on the container and turned her shoulder, a silent plea to be left alone. Daniel took a step forward, then stopped. What was he doing? He didn't know this woman. He didn't know her story. Yet the image of her, wet, shivering, eating cold food in the rain, lodged in his chest like a splinter. He thought of Lily, safe in her preschool, her pink raincoat and matching boots. He thought of Claire, probably packing a suitcase in their Upper West Side apartment. He thought of his own mother, who had died when he was 12, leaving him with a father too busy building a real estate empire to notice a grieving son. He crossed the path, his shoes sinking into the mud. Evelyn tensed as he approached, her instincts honed by years of surviving on the streets. She had learned to read people quickly, predators, preachers, or the rare few who meant no harm. This man, with his expensive suit and clean nails, didn't strike her as dangerous, but trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Ma'am," Daniel said, his voice softer than he intended. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Are you okay?" Evelyn didn't look up. "I'm fine," she muttered, her voice raspy from disuse. She scooped another bite, chewing slowly, as if to prove she didn't need him. Daniel stood there, rain soaking his shirt, plastering it to his skin. He felt foolish, intrusive. "It's pouring," he said, stating the obvious. "There's a cafe across the street. It's warm. Dry. If you want." "I said I'm fine," Evelyn snapped, her eyes flashing as she finally met his gaze. They were sharp, intelligent, not the dulled eyes of someone broken. "I don't need your charity, suit." The words hit Daniel like a slap. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. Why? She was right. What was he offering? A coffee. A moment of comfort. It wouldn't change her night, her week, her life. He nodded, stepping back. "Okay. I'm sorry." He turned to leave, but something held him. Maybe it was the way her hands shook, or the way she clutched the food like it might vanish. Maybe it was the guilt of his own privilege, the warmth of his apartment, the fullness of his fridge. He faced her again. "What's your name?" Evelyn hesitated. Names were dangerous. They made you real. But there was something in his voice. Not pity, not condescension. Curiosity, maybe. "Evelyn," she said finally, barely above a whisper. "I'm Daniel." He gestured vaguely toward the park. "I walk through here sometimes. I don't usually." He trailed off, unsure how to finish. "I don't usually see people like you. I don't usually care." Both felt wrong. Evelyn studied him, her guard still up but softening at the edges. "You got somewhere to be, Daniel." He glanced at his watch, a Rolex that cost more than she could imagine. "Yeah, work. But it can wait a minute." He surprised himself with the words. His meeting was with a client who could make or break his quarter. But standing here, in the rain, he felt the weight of something bigger. Evelyn snorted, a sound that might have been a laugh. Fancy watch for a man standing in the mud. Daniel looked down at his shoes, caked in grime. "Yeah, well, not my finest moment." He hesitated, then sat on a nearby bench, keeping a respectful distance. The rain drummed on the leaves above them, a steady rhythm. "You from around here?" "Born and raised in Brooklyn," Evelyn said, her voice warming slightly. "Williamsburg, before it was all hipsters and overpriced coffee." She paused, then added, "You?" "Connecticut," Daniel said. "But I've been in the city since college." "NYU Law." Evelyn nodded, as if that explained everything. The suit, the watch, the hesitation. "Lawyer. Huh. You sue people for a living." "Sometimes," Daniel admitted. "Mostly corporations. Paperwork. Negotiations. Not as glamorous as TV makes it seem." Evelyn scooped the last of her food, closing the container with care. She set it beside her, a small ritual of gratitude for what little she had. "Glamorous or not, you got a roof. A job. That's more than most." Daniel didn't respond right away. He watched her wipe her hands on her dress, the gesture careful, deliberate. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have you been out here?" Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "You writing a book, lawyer?" "No, I just." He stopped, realizing how invasive the question was. "I'm sorry. That's none of my business." She surprised him by answering. 3 years. Lost my apartment when the rent went up. Social Security don't cover Manhattan prices. My kids. Her voice cracked, and she looked away, toward the empty chess tables. They got their own lives. Don't need an old woman dragging 'em down. Daniel's chest tightened. He thought of Lily, her gap-toothed smile, the way she called him Daddy, even when he came home late. He thought of Claire, her quiet resentment, the distance growing between them. I'm sorry, he said, and this time, he meant it. Evelyn shrugged, but her shoulders sagged. Life's what it is. You play the hand you're dealt. The rain slowed to a drizzle, the clouds parting just enough to let a sliver of sunlight through. Daniel stood, brushing mud from his pants, though it was pointless. There's a shelter on Lafayette, he said. Street. Mary's. They've got cots, hot meals. I could walk you there. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. She saw the lines of stress around his eyes, the way his hands fidgeted with his tie. He wasn't offering out of guilt, not entirely. There was something else. Loneliness, maybe, or a need to connect with something real. I know Street. Mary's, she said. Lines are long. Beds fill up by 5. She stood slowly, her joints protesting, and picked up her plastic bag of belongings. A few clothes, a worn paperback, a photo of her grandchildren she couldn't bear to look at. But I'll manage. Daniel nodded, unsure what to do with his hands. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, then stopped. Money felt wrong, transactional. Instead, he took out a business card. If you ever need anything, he said, holding it out. A call, a favor. I mean it. Evelyn took the card, her